Hello everyone, welcome to our live series interviews. These are based on our previous teachings. If you haven't checked them out, you can find them on our YouTube channel, our Facebook and podcast. I'm Esau.
And I'm Nathaniel.
And today we're going to be interviewing Lara on the topic of missions, and it's really good to have you here, Lara.
It's great to be here, guys.
Yeah, thanks for joining us.
Yeah.
So we just wanted to ask you if you could introduce yourself.
Yeah, it's great. My name is Lara. I have been working with YWAM for about 20 years now, which is a little unbelievable. And I've been able to serve and work in many different nations in the world. I've traveled to probably over 20 nations, served in West Asia, and currently living here in England and working with the base here at YWAM Harpenden, involved in leadership as well as training people to work in the frontiers and all kinds of other fun stuff.
That's
basically.
awesome. You're a woman.
I'm married. I have 2 kids.
Yeah, a woman of many
there you go.
areas. Just to get to know you a bit more, what's one of your favorite dishes from around the globe?
Oh, well, I don't like to be exclusive, so I like to eat a lot of different foods. But probably some of my favorite food would be Mediterranean food, as well as I really like Mexican food. As an American, Mexican food has a very special place in my heart. But I would also put Korean food up there because bulgogi can change your life.
Amen.
If it's made well. So all of that and probably more.
Yeah. Food is good anyway, right?
Right.
So, but like talking about missions now, you've been to many places. You must have the longest experience. But like going back to the beginning, how did you decide to work with missions and to go into missions? How was it for you?
After I finished my university degree, I was just kind of looking to do something before I had to start into a real job. So I had an opportunity to go out of my own nation for the first time for 2 months to work on a farm. I have a degree in agriculture, actually, and I was able to use my knowledge in agriculture to live missionally in the nation of Belarus. And I think for the first time I just saw like, wow, this is something where you can use your interests, you can use your passions to serve God. And so in returning from that trip, I was looking into what kind of training I could do. I discovered what a DTS was, a discipleship training school. And in my DTS, I think one of the things that really changed kind of how I viewed missions or how I saw that this could be something that I wanted to do is that I had finally found something that was bigger than me. It didn't depend on me knowing enough or having certain credentials or having a certain expertise in something. Missions was this thing that it was God's thing, and I just got to partner with him, and it was so freeing to not have this pressure on me to do something, but actually just to get to be a part of what he's doing. And I think that's why I'm still involved in missions today, is because it doesn't depend on me. It's him. And I just get to obey him.
So true.
So
yeah, that's so true. I think that's
why I've stuck with it.
Yeah, come on. And from your time, you've been a missionary for how long again?
A little over 20 years.
Wow, that's amazing.
It's a long journey.
What is one of your favorite stories to tell people of your life, really, not just missionaries?
Well, I mean, I've had so many different experiences. I mean, I feel privileged to have had so many different experiences. I think one that sticks out is I was with a friend of mine. We were visiting a home in kind of down toward the Middle East area, and we were just visiting with the family. And it was a mom and her 3 adult children, and we were just talking about life and talking about things. And the mom was really interested in God and kind of spiritual things. So we just started telling her about Jesus, and basically we were able to start from Genesis and really explain the story of the Bible and about Jesus and all these things. And we spent the whole evening. It was just such an open door. So my friend was doing most of the talking, and I was kind of interjecting things, but also I was observing this family and their dynamic and the different ways they were responding to what she was saying. And at the end of the evening, my friends, we were talking to them, and she said, do you have anything you want to say? And so I just felt the Lord kind of prompt me to like encourage them one at a time.
Wow.
I said to one of the daughters, she was so good at kind of hearing what my friend was saying, and she would take a concept and like simplify it and then kind of restate it to everyone else in the family. So I just said, wow, I think God's really given you an ability to grasp big ideas and simplify them, just kind of calling out things of God in them that I saw. One, a servant heart, another one, just a real desire to help. So, and you would have thought I had poured water on a desert. Like just speaking out what I think is actually identity pieces is physically their countenance changed. Like physically, you know how it is when you praise someone or when you speak out something you see that's great in them. It's like the whole family just changed, and it really, I like that story because it reminds me, it actually changed kind of one of my strategies of how do I reach out to people. And since then, I've really tried to start with just seeing what of God I can find in them. It's an identity piece. It's calling out the identity of God in people. So that was really a significant moment and evening that changed how I even viewed how do we do mission.
Yeah,
It seems quite like a simple way
Yeah.
of doing it.
Yeah, and powerful, still powerful.
Yeah.
And I heard this story before from you, and I really like it because it's, as we said, it's simple but powerful, and it also helped me to see that it's not too hard to do missions and to bless people. And because sometimes we think, oh, it's so complicated, like to preach the gospel, sometimes we're afraid of doing it. And speaking about it, I want to ask you, if before, what was your point of view about doing missions? Did you have a different point of view? Was it different for you, like even before becoming a Christian or even as a Christian already?
Yeah. I mean, I think before I kind of became a missionary, I would say I had a very narrow view of what it was, what it meant to be a missionary. It meant mud hut with a tribe that wears half their clothing, this kind of thing. It was a very narrow, well, that's missions.
Many people think like that.
Yeah,
okay.
many people do. And hopefully that's changing. I think that picture, that kind of stereotype, I hope it's changing. But I have learned that missions and living missionally is so diverse. I mean, you can literally do anything in a missional way and make an impact for the kingdom of God. And I think even like in that story, like just it doesn't have to be complicated. You don't have to always have this. Sometimes I used to be afraid, well, you had to say the right thing and it had to have these 4 points, and then if you did it all right, then maybe they'd say yes to Jesus. But actually, it's a lot about just being real with people and hearing from God what his heart is for that person, and then just speaking that out or calling that out or saying, helping them, whatever. So my view of missions has expanded, and what it looks like and how we do it has definitely expanded since 20 years ago.
And talking before, we were like saying that some people might have this negative connotation about the word missionary.
Yeah.
Why do you think is that? What do you think it has, like maybe has this negative connotation?
I actually don't. Often people say, what do you do? Sometimes I don't even use the word missionary. Not that it's a bad word, like it's a good word. I do find that sometimes that word has a lot of connotation to it for some people, or in people's minds when you say missionary, they do just think of a mud hut or someone living in poverty, or like a Mother Teresa. Like there's a very narrow view. Other people have, for some people, missionaries were people that came to take over, like maybe even colonialization or kind of negative things related to Westerners going into
to change the culture, right?
Yeah, to change the culture or to change politics or all that stuff. So I try not to overuse the word missionary, because also there's some people that maybe if they didn't grow up in a church background, or they don't have a context of what that means, So I often try to say, I'm trying to live intentionally on mission, or I'm trying to be have a missional lifestyle where I'm trying to do all that I can to see God's kingdom come in a place, you know. So I think there's different ways we can communicate what it is that we're actually doing, if that makes sense.
Yeah, definitely. And going more specifically into what we think, who we should be targeting as missionaries, not targeting, but going for and loving. In your teaching, you talked about God wanting to be known by all nations and everyone in that nation, whether they're poor and rich. What would you say to those that typically think of people or missionaries going to the poorer places of the world? Because here we are in Wyvern Harpenden.
Yeah.
We're surrounded by very affluent people, an affluent area of the world. What would you say to people like that?
Well, I would say that God's love isn't just for a select few.
Come on.
I think often missionaries have gone to maybe the more poor or needier areas because the need is more obvious in some ways. There's a physical need there too that we, as Christians, I think we're called to meet some of those physical needs. But that doesn't mean that people that have money or have possessions, whatever, don't have as much or don't have needs as well, don't have spiritual needs. Doesn't mean that they're not without knowing Jesus. So I think one of the things that I've really reminded myself is living missionally is about looking around, seeing who's around you, no matter where you live, and seeing what God is doing and partner with Him in what He's doing. Whatever that looks like. If you look around and you see poor and needy, then you help the poor and needy with God's love. If you look around and you see academics and professors, then you partner with God in what He's doing in that academic world. If you look around and you're surrounded by businessmen and entrepreneurs, then you partner with God in what He's doing, and you live missionally and intentionally in that area. And I think that's where some of our understanding of missions needs to change even. It's like God's heart is for all nations, all peoples, all social levels. It's for, He wants all people to know Him.
Yeah.
And He's good news for everyone. He's good news for someone that's poor, and He's good news for someone who has $1 billion.
Yeah, absolutely.
I really believe it. Like, He is good news, and that's what missions is.
Definitely.
Yeah, it's good to hear that because it was my struggle in coming to England, like personally. Like, why you're going to England? They don't need Jesus, they don't need missionaries. But yes, every part in the world, they need Jesus, they need to know about the gospel. So, yes.
Definitely. And I think sometimes with the affluent people, it takes more intentionality with the Holy Spirit to actually ask Holy Spirit, okay, what are the needs of these people? Because they're not so obvious as the poor and needy.
Sometimes they're hidden, or there's layers that kind of keep us from actually seeing. But people are people. And it goes back to identity. Like, all people hurt. All people need to have purpose in their life. All people want hope. Doesn't matter who you are. Like, all these things that Jesus can bring, all people need those things, want those things.
Yes, that's what the gospel brings to us, right?
Yeah.
You also said in your teaching that we are meant to do missions wherever we are in our jobs and universities. It doesn't matter. But when it comes to a specific calling, like if we're called for a specific nation to do a specific work, why is that important to be trained, to be equipped to do that?
Well, I always think of, like, if you're going to be a carpenter, but you showed up and you didn't have any tools, then how are you going to build anything? Like, how are you going to do the job that you're passionate about or you feel like you're called to? So I often consider training as just like getting the tools, getting tools that you need or may need to do the thing that God's put on your heart. And so I think that in training looks so many different ways. For some people that might be feeling called to a certain nation, but you need to go to university to get a certain degree first so you can do a certain job. For others, it could be you need to go get some Bible school teaching, whatever. For others, training may be doing some different seminars, just learning about disciple-making movements or church planting or community development. Like, having some actual tools so when you go to that nation that God's put on your heart, you have something to draw from, And also, I think part of training is learning about that people, learning about that nation, learning about their history, learning about their worldview, learning about things that could be obstacles to the good news of Jesus coming, and then have the tools to help, to help do the things that God's called you to do there. So I think training is really important. But it doesn't always have to be formal training. Sometimes it can be informal training or on-the-job training, Go and get trained there. So
yeah, I think especially after these big events we had recently about missions like Descent in Brazil, and we have a lot of young people like really excited and passionate about I want to go and I want to do missions, and they don't think I need to prepare myself to do that, because I think most people don't consider like being a missionary as a real job, or it just maybe a hobby, or like, oh, I'm going to do that for fun. I don't know what they think.
Okay. It's a real job. Well, I've been doing it for 20 years,
Come
so
on.
it must be a real job, right?
Yes, it has to be.
So good. I think one of the things that why YWAM is so passionate about training is because they see that we need, as YWAMers, we need both passion for Jesus, like depth of knowing Jesus, loving Jesus,
Come on.
learning who he is, being on fire for him. At the same time, we need skills, knowledge, tools that we can use. And if we can get those things together, then we will be better at living missionally. We'll be better missionaries wherever God puts us. So I think I think that's why YM is so strong in training to prepare people, not just in the practical, but also preparing our hearts and the way that we even approach God, the way that we feed ourselves spiritually so that we can give out to others. You can't give what you don't have yourself,
It's true.
Yeah.
So I think that's some of the key to...
So at the end of the day, seek both the passion and the skills.
Yeah. Don't just take one and hold on to it, but always be a learner in every situation. Take both.
Mm.
Yeah.
And specifically in this time of lockdown, of coronavirus pandemic, all of that, what would you give as advice to the viewers that we're watching? You were talking a lot about training. Is there training available during this time that we could get ready to go to the mission field, even in this time?
Yeah.
What would you say to that?
There's a lockdown? No,
apparently.
Well,
someone said that.
Jesus is not locked down.
Yeah.
Come on.
Good news.
Totally.
We actually have to stay in our homes.
Mm.
I would say definitely during this time, one of the things that I've been thinking about is how can we be creative in missions and reaching people with the gospel? How can we be creative in sharing the good news when maybe we can't physically be close to someone? And I think a lot of opportunities are there. There's so much now that we can do online. There's so much training online that's available. There's so many evangelistic opportunities, Alpha Course and probably other courses that different churches are running where the people are now used to going online to find information. It's kind of forced us to do that. So I think as people who, I think maybe even one of the questions I was looking at where it says, what can we practically do? Well, I think first we can practically spend time with Jesus, and get his heart for the nations.
So
and sometimes we want to do stuff, but actually the first thing is learn to just be intentional with being with Jesus, getting his heart, asking him, because in that place of prayer and in that place of knowing him, that's where he speaks to us about people groups and nations, or what he wants us to do with our lives, those kind of things. So it is about doing during this lockdown time, but in some ways it's been a gift to many of us to stop and just kind of refocus our faces on Jesus. Definitely. And say, God, what is your heart for people? Let's start with the people I'm locked down with. How can I intentionally love them? If you can't love them, how are you going to love the nations, So
Yeah, that's so true.
how do we love these people? Okay, now, how do we love those people out there? How do we, And I actually really believe has already been giving new ideas and creative things that we're going to see coming out of lockdown and the pandemic. I think we're going to see some really new ways of sharing the gospel, which is exciting, to be
definitely.
honest.
Yes. And it's been a good time to connect with people, and sometimes we are so busy, even as like doing missions, like so busy doing stuff, and you don't have time to chat with someone and check out how you're doing, you need something. And I think that's a good time, even in the midst of this, like it's a mess, but we can still reach out to people and do something good. Yes. And you gave a good example about like your own experience. I didn't know that you had a major as in agriculture.
Yeah.
And you could use it as a tool in doing missions. And like how to start doing it in the different spheres of the society. Like for example, me as a journalist, how can I start doing missions? Like, do I need to be a missionary? Like what can I do to make a difference in my workplace, for example?
I definitely would say it starts with getting God's heart for that sphere that you're in. Wherever God has you, ask for his heart. God, what is your purpose for this sphere of influence? Because when we can get God's heart to see, okay, how does a journalist, how can God use journalism and media or storytelling or whatever, how can he use that? If his kingdom principles come into that sphere, how is that going to change the rest of society? So I think it starts at that place. As a Christian, if you're working in a certain sphere, arts, entertainment, or economics, business, the church, just start by asking God, okay, God, what's your heart here? And then thinking, how can I be intentional about bringing my faith into that? And I think sometimes people make the mistake of either separating it, like this is my faith and this is my job, or they try to make it too, this is my opinion, they try to make it too, well, I'm a Christian filmmaker, or am I a filmmaker who's a Christian? And this whole question becomes this whole kind of what am I, and it's identity stuff. I just say, why do we have to separate it out? Let's just be followers of Jesus in whatever we are doing, being intentional to bring his kingdom principles into that.
That's so good.
Just into wherever you're at. If you're a student, if you're a professor, if you're driving a taxi, how do you bring Jesus into your environment and be looking for opportunity to share him or to share truth about the kingdom of God? So I think we don't need to complicate it. My husband says, keep it simple. Yeah. It's his motto.
Come on. Keep it simple.
Keep it simple.
Yeah. And I think being the mission field, for not as long as you, for sure, but I can see it's possible to use your skills, the professionally, the skills you have to bless, but to teach people in a poor community that don't have a lot of resources. You can teach them a new language or teach them I don't know, grammar or something like that.
One time, someone told me a story about someone came to them and said, I really want to be involved in missions, but I don't know what I can do. And she said, well, what skills do you have? And he said, I'm a professional wig maker for the theater. And she's like, wow, okay. Well, it ended up, she connected this person with a charity or some project that made wigs for cancer patients in some part of Africa. I can't remember what nation, but so he was able to, he worked full time with them, and so he was able to use this kind of obscure profession to do something that was impacting for kingdom purposes. So I am a firm believer you can use any training, anything.
Yes, totally.
Whatever your passion is, God can use it in some way. I really believe it.
I feel like I want to think of something that
you can
will challenge you.
Try.
Yeah, okay, we'll think by the end. But for those that are wanting to join missions long term, I think a lot of our viewers are younger and maybe starting out. What would you say to those younger people?
Yeah, just do it. Go for it.
Don't be afraid.
Don't be afraid. I think if you really feel like you want to, even if you want to explore missions, sometimes people are like, I'm in for the long haul. I'm going to do it for the next 30 years. That's pretty rare these days, but just start. I think the for me, I would say just take the first step. Don't stop. Sometimes we think we have to have the whole plan before we take the first step. I would say just take the first step.
So good.
Maybe the first step is talk to someone who's done it. Or maybe the first step is do a Bible study about God's Great Commission. Or maybe the first step is I'm gonna go do a DTS and see what this whole thing is about knowing God and making Him known. You know what I mean? Just sometimes that first step is all you need to keep going in that direction. And as the Lord if the Lord has put that calling and that heart for the nations in you, then just keep saying yes to Him, and He'll lead you down that path. Because I think everyone's journey is different, you know. And there's so many different organizations, mission organizations. There's different ways people can get involved in the spheres or in different or charities. People are doing amazing things around the world. So, kind of find the place you fit and do it. Don't hold back, or don't let that first step kind of keep you from following what God's put on your heart.
So good.
Yes,
That's what I do. Keep it simple.
Yeah.
What are some with us here at Wyoming? We're a missionary base, campus, and so how can they get involved here?
Well, we love to train missionaries here.
Yeah.
We love to train people. We want people to come and encounter God. We want people to, like I said, grow in a deep, passionate knowing Jesus, knowing who they are, who God made them. At the same time, we want them to see that it's not just for them, it's to take out to the world and the skills they need to share it. So you can go on the website. I'm sure you can call someone here if you just have any questions. I'm sure we'll have people that can answer questions about what does it look like to become a missionary. There's so many opportunities. So check out the website. Watch our YouTube live series.
Come on.
Get a little taster of what a DTS is like. At least the teaching part.
Yeah, that's great. I have one last question. I want to hear a bit more from your heart. Being in missions for so many years, what keeps you going and not giving up?
Oh, good question.
Not giving up. Well, I'll have to say there have been times I've wanted to give up, if I'm honest.
That was one of my questions, but...
Yeah. But that's, all of us. I think one of the things, like I said earlier, one of the reasons why I'm still, I think, involved in this kind of work and have made it, my career is that it's God's thing, and it doesn't depend on me messing up, I can't mess it up kind of thing, or it doesn't depend on me succeeding at certain things. It really is just listening to Him and obeying what He says to do, and I personally find that so freeing. I find that like a free life, I just feel free in that. I think other things that have kept me going is I try to remind myself that the things that I give my time to, the things I'm investing into, have, not to put it in a dramatic way, but there's a life and death kind of consequence to it. It does make a difference. For some people, it's a life and death thing. That people need to know Jesus. He is good news.
Yeah.
So there's a value in sharing the gospel. There's a value in going to places where no one has taken the gospel, because people are dying without hearing about Jesus.
Not just about me. Yes, it's about all of us. Right?
Yeah. So I think it's knowing that keeps reminding me, we've got something here. God needs us. God has chosen to use us, humans. Wow. He's chosen to use us. So I find it just a privilege. So even when it is hard, sometimes it's just trusting Him. It really is a privilege.
That's true. Such a privilege. So, yes, it was also a privilege to have you here talking to us.
Yeah, it's a good interview.
Yes, thank you very much for sharing with us.
Yeah, and if you haven't already, like Laura said, go check out our other videos, our other teachings as well, on our YouTube, Facebook, and podcasts. It's been great to have you with us. See you later.
Yeah, thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.